morning. My name is Soo Kim. I'm director of the GW Institute for Korean Studies and co-director of East Asia National Resource Center. I'm also Korea Foundation Associate Professor of History, International Affairs, and East Asian Languages and Literatures. I would like to welcome all of you to our first virtual event of this academic year. This Korea Policy Forums event is co-sponsored by GWIX and East Asia National Resource Center. And this forum was made possible by the generous grant from KDI School of Public Policy and Management. Before I forget, I would like to mention about the survey. My staff asked me to make sure that I mention about it. We'll be sending out a survey email after this event. We'd appreciate if you could fill out the survey so that we can improve our future virtual events. Thanks in advance for your cooperation. The world has changed since early this year. It's been already 6 months that we've been staying home and practicing social distancing. I hope you've all been safe and healthy wherever you are. This semester, GW has gone virtual, not only for classes, but also for public events. Accordingly, all of GWIC's events will be held online this fall. I'm extremely delighted to open GWIC's first public event with our distinguished speaker, Ambassador Soo Hyuck Lee. It is our great honor and privilege to have him with us today. I would like to thank Ambassador Lee for accepting our invitation, not only for today's event, but also agreeing to give his congratulatory remarks at next week's 70th year commemoration of the Korean War Conference. We were supposed to have this conference back in June, but it was rescheduled to September due to COVID-19. And this conference announcement just went out yesterday, so please check your email and RSVP if you're interested. We are sincerely grateful for Ambassador Lee's time and interest in meeting with GW community and our audience throughout the world. I say throughout the world now because we literally received RSVPs from various parts of the globe. One thing positive about this pandemic is that it enabled us to reach out to a much broader audience beyond Washington. We received almost 200 RSVPs for this event, and among them include audiences from not only here in the United States, but also Korea, Japan, Australia, India, and Malaysia. It was especially exciting to see students named from India and Malaysia. I would like to thank everyone who's joining us today and also for submitting your questions. Due to time restrictions, I won't be able to ask all the questions, so please don't hate me for not asking your question, nothing personal. When choosing the questions for Ambassador Lee, we gave priority to our GW students since this event was initially prepared to give an opportunity to our students who are interested in Korean studies to learn and engage in conversation with Ambassador Lee. It is now my great pleasure and honor to introduce Ambassador Lee. Ambassador Lee is an experienced diplomat and former legislator. He has served as Korean Ambassador, Extraordinary, and Plenipotentiary to the United States since October 2019. Prior to his appointment, Ambassador Lee served as a member of the 20th Korean National Assembly, where he was a member of the Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee, and endowed chair, professor at Dankook University in Seoul, and first deputy director of the National Intelligence Service. He was previously the ambassador to Germany, deputy minister for political affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, ambassador extraordinary and plenipotentiary to the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, and minister counselor at the Korean Embassy in the United States. Ambassador Lee has published multiple works, including Conversations with Unified Germany in 2006, Transforming Events, Analysis of North Korea's Nuclear Issues in 2008, and North Korea is a Reality in 2011. He has twice been awarded the Order of Service Merit. He received his BA in International Relations from Seoul National University and MA in Political Science from Yonsei University. Ambassador Lee will now first speak about 20 minutes, followed by my 2 questions, and then we'll spend the rest of the time asking questions from our audience. The title of today's talk is Security on the Korean Peninsula and the US-ROK Relations. Now, without further ado, I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to Ambassador Lee. Ambassador Lee?
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here with you today. My name is Soo Hyuck Lee. I'm the ambassador to the United States. It's my pleasure to address a group from George Washington University as it takes me back to some of my most enjoyable days when I was a university professor in Korea. Of course, speaking as a special guest is even better than being a professor because I don't have to grade any papers. Before being a professor, I was a career diplomat, and this is my 4th time working as a diplomat here in the United States. I previously served twice in New York in the US, at the Korean mission to the United Nations, and also served at the embassy here in Washington, D.C. about 20 years ago as a political counselor. During this time, the United States, Korea, and our bilateral relationship have all evolved. And as a result, there have been many changes. But perhaps the biggest change I see today is how much Americans have increased both their interest in and acknowledge of Korea. Today, more than ever, our bilateral alliance is not just an abstract concept. It has become deeply embedded in the daily lives of both Koreans and Americans. You and your interest in furthering that relationship are the testaments of that close bilateral relationship. When you ask Koreans about the Korea-US alliance, we will get a variety of answers, but the keyword that penetrates all generations is gratitude. We often use the phrase an alliance forged in blood to describe our relationship. It refers to the bond our soldiers formed fighting together during Korean War. In 1950, young men from all over the United States responded to the nation's call to go to Korea and defend a country they never knew and people they had never met. Soldiers and sailors from the United States and Korea fought shoulder to shoulder for the values they believed in, and they created a comradeship that can never be broken. These veterans are the foundation of our alliance. Many of these young soldiers and sailors have passed away, but there are many still alive. And as ambassador, I go out of my way to try to meet Korean war veterans whenever I can to express our thanks and gratitude for their service. But the relationship is also important to youngest people like you. The war is an important part of our history, and young Koreans are exposed both directly and indirectly to stories about the Korean War. They learn early on about the sacrifices so many Americans made for their freedom. For much of my life, our alliance was primarily about security cooperation. Our militaries successfully worked together to preserve peace and to allow prosperity to develop on the Korean Peninsula. In more recent years, however, the alliance has moved beyond security to embrace economic cooperation, and today it includes vibrant cultural cooperation as well. As Korea gains popularity in the United States, many Americans have become Koreophiles. It is heartwarming to watch young people in the United States search for Korean dramas on Netflix, watch Korean movies, listen to Korean music, read Korean literature, and view Korean art. They use Korean technology to play online games with the Koreans and download mobile apps from Korea. The K-pop group BTS sells out Staples Center and Citi Field in minutes. Their newest single, Dynamite, hit #1 on Billboard Hot 100. And I suspect that there are quite a few ARMY BTS fans here with me now. In addition, we are very excited about how many Americans have taken liking to Korean movies and television. The K-drama, The King, Eternal Monarch, was one of the Netflix's most popular shows over the last few months. And of course, the film Parasite won 4 Oscars earlier this year, including becoming the first non-English language film to be named Best Picture. One of the most important changes, at least to me, has been the American embrace of Korean cuisine. I can personally verify that the quality of the Korean food you can get in the DC area now is a vast improvement over what you could get 20 years ago. So what began as a military alliance has evolved into comprehensive strategic alliance. Today, Korea stands as a robust partner with the United States in every aspect. We share important values like democracy and the market economy, learn from each other, and appreciate each other's contributions. As an ambassador and as a Korean, I am incredibly proud of our bilateral alliance, and I will always work to preserve and strengthen it and help guide it through good times and bad. Our response to the ongoing pandemic is a case in point. From early on, Korea and the United States have worked together to try to cope with and defeat the virus. When the virus first hit Korea early this year, the United States provided us with significant support to help us fight the first wave, and our efforts proved remarkably successful. When the virus moved on and came to the United States, Korea helped to supply the US with testing kits and medical research to help the United States flatten the curve. We are still assisting each other, including by sharing our experience on how to run an election during the pandemic, as Korea successfully did in April. Both the United States and Korea received genuine benefits because of our relationship. In part, this is because the Korean people, the American people genuinely like each other and consider one another friends. This is the real strength of our alliance. I have begun to think of our relationship like a tree. The military alliance acts as foundation. It is the roots and the trunk that keep everything stable and strong. Our economic cooperation has grown out of that trunk. It is the branches and the leaves that provide volume and structure. Then the cultural elements are all of the sweet fruits and the beautiful flowers that come from those branches. They are what we can taste and smell and admire. None of these fruits or flowers would be here without the long-standing military and economic alliances that have allowed the cultural exchange to flourish. There is a famous saying in Korea that translates as a tree with deep roots will have many fruits. And I am confident that roots of our alliance are strong enough and deep enough that our cooperative ties will continue to grow and prosper for many years to come. As experts to be in Asian policy, you will be the next leaders and professionals of this important relationship. You are the future of the relationship. That is why I want to speak to you today. Thank you for your attention. If you have any comments or questions, I'm happy to discuss them with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Lee. Thanks for your overview of US-ROK relations, covering from history of alliance to security cooperation, democracy, market economy, K-culture, and up to the very recent pandemic. And also, I really appreciate how you value the education of our students. All right, so I would like to begin with my two questions that I prepared. And my first question is, because of Korea's early success in fighting the pandemic, you must have had many questions from your American friends about how it happened. What was the gist of your answers?
It is always difficult to task to balance two competing needs, and it is more so when it comes to tackling public health care crisis as well as economic fallout, which were brought about by the COVID-19. Korea's early success of COVID-19 response has been supported by three main principles. The first is transparency. From the earliest stage of our outbreak, we provide all information to the public, and it paid off. This transparency has been critical for government health experts to monitor the situation and take the most appropriate measure. It also increased the trust of the public and facilitated coordination between the central and regional governments. We even stepped up to develop mobile applications which allow us to track positive patients without compromising their personal data. Second is openness. This was in many ways the most difficult part in our response. If we closed all our sea and air borders at any early stage, the situation might be better now. If we had banned travel from outside, we might be better off. However, instead, the Korean government closed to impose an effective and aggressive inbound and outbound travel quarantine, rather than an all-out ban. For example, if you want to travel to the United States from Seoul, you must go through a 3-stage check, and may travel only if you have obtained a government-issued health certificate. Our experience taught us that openness and the necessity of containment need to be well balanced depending on the situation. The last principle is close cooperation with the civil society and the people. We have many heroes in our fight, including medical workers, civil activists, and the citizens themselves. We are waging a public campaign of emotional solidarity on top of social distancing. This is long better, and we must be duly prepared for it by developing solidarity among the people. Without self-restraint and public cooperation, our measures could not be effective. However, the recent increase in confirmed cases in Korea shows that fight against COVID-19 is not easy. Each country has different socio-economic situation. There will be no all-cure solution, but in this prolonged battle against the COVID-19, the international cooperation will be the only answer to us to be a winner ultimately. The COVID-19 is a prime example that underlines the critical value of sharing information and cooperating in responding to global challenges, threatening a universal virtue of all humankind. No country can cope with these ongoing challenges alone. I hope that the international community will go through this difficult situation together.
Thank you. As you say, I think international cooperation is the key here, and hope the world will be able to get back to normal once again. So my next question is, we've been seeing an intensifying strategic competition between the US and China over the last couple of years. The pandemic seems to have made the situation even worse. And people often question Korea's complicated positioning in this rivalry situation. What are your thoughts on this question related to Korea's position?
As a Korean ambassador to the United States, I have a great interest in the US-China relations. This is because of the future of the Korean Peninsula, including North Korean issues, may well be fundamentally determined by the United States-China dynamics. And from geopolitical perspective, it is impossible to talk about Korea's policy toward the United States or China without considering the two powers' influence in the region and in the world. How should Korea position itself to maintain a strong alliance with the United States while securing cooperation from both countries? This is a very important question for the Korean government. Meanwhile, with the United States-China rivalry escalating, we also have to contemplate the future vision of the ROK-US alliance. In the process, Korea's geopolitical uniqueness, the fact that the United States is our ally, while China is one of our biggest trade partners in the region, needs to be considered. If the alliance were to evolve, what can we expect in the future? Korea's geopolitical uniqueness is a double-edged sword. as it could be a strength or weakness, depending on how we address and utilize it. And as the Korean ambassador, this is something to be mindful of when dealing with Korean Peninsula affairs.
Okay, thank you. The word, your phrase, a double-edged sword, it really touched me, because in my class, history of Korea class, I always mention about this phrase, a shrimp crush between whales, that Korea is often referred to as this phrase. But the important question here is how shrimp throughout 5,000 years of history that we say continue to survive rather than having been eaten by the whales. So I think that's the key point there. And I think there's a lot to think about in that phrase. Okay, now moving on to students' questions. Our first question is by Emerald O'Brien, GW student from Milken Institute of Public Health. Her question is, what role do you envision public health professionals playing in bilateral relations between the US and South Korea post-pandemic? Do you envision an increased demand for these voices in diplomacy?
First of all, I have to mention about the cooperation between the experts between United States and Korea. Without my embassy's involvement, I think the two authorities, the medical authorities dealing with the coronavirus, are cooperating with each other every day, as I have heard from Seoul or from Washington, D.C. Their exchange of views, exchange of information are very critical for the United States and for the South Korea to survive this pandemic. Still, Korea has almost, controlled this pandemic, but unfortunately, United States, you are still fighting very hard to cope with this pandemic. Still, we learn that every day about 1,000 people die, unfortunately. But in Korea, up to now, all together, from the beginning of this pandemic, up to now, only the 320 people die. So compared to these death tolls, we are very successful. But I hope that the United States will survive in fighting with this coronavirus, owing to the cooperation, medical cooperation or information cooperation between the two agencies, between the two countries. And for in the process of diplomacy, my embassy has been doing work very hard in order to maintain the cooperation. We have provided the test kits to the United States and masks and other medical equipment. And the United States also provide us with some medical equipment. And this kind of the things could be done through the diplomatic channels. This embassy has been involved in the supply of these materials, including the test kits, to federal government levels as well as state government levels. So these kind of things could be conducted not only through diplomacy, but also diplomacy has been doing very effectively in dealing with this pandemic.
All right, thank you very much. Well, thanks for all the effort that you're doing to help the United States. Hope things will improve and get better soon, and hopefully we'll have vaccines so that people will be able to go out freely once again. All right, next question is from another GW student, Hanwon Fan. How do you see Sino-Korea relationship change considering the increasing strained relations between US and China? Also, how do you see relations with Japan change following Abe's resignation?
The relations between the United States and China is very important or critical to the fate of the Korean Peninsula. Not only South Korea, but also North Korea. The Korean Peninsula is influenced by the geopolitics. Korean Peninsula is a real peninsula under the continent of Asia. Most of the Asia is occupied by China. You can guess how big the China territory is. And through the long history, we have a very close relations historically with China. Sometimes China invades Korean Peninsula. We defeated China sometimes about 1,000 years ago. Many fights, many battles, many wars between China and Korea. But we Koreans have survived from this kind of the wars between China and Korea. Still, the Chinese influence is very enormous in terms of the relations of economy between the two countries. Due to the proximity in geography, we cannot avoid of cooperation economy in terms of the economy with China. But we have maintained alliance with the United States more than how long? We achieved the agreement for the alliance in 1953, right? Then about 67 years have passed with this alliance. So this allianceship is very, the tight and very helpful. And through this alliance, South Korea has been protected from invasion of North Korea again. So we are counting on the alliance in terms of the security, but we are counting on China in terms of the economic cooperation. China has become the #1 trade partner. In the past, United States was the #1 trade partner, but nowadays, China has become the #1 trade partner. So many Korean businessmen have invested in China, and the trade volume is a huge amount. So how to cooperate between United States and China are very critical. Well, there are very fierce argument about the standing position of Korean government, South Korea. I mean, the alliance with the United States, economic cooperation with China, also are very important. Security alone cannot make one nation survive. Economic activity is as important as the security itself. So how to balance these two elements, as I briefly mentioned in my speech, these two elements should go together. Not one thing is most important than other things. We cannot say in the way, both things, security and the economy, should go together. And regarding the Prime Minister, Japanese Prime Minister Abe's resignation, I hope that his successor could take this more positive policy with South Korea. And I hope that the new government in Japan could more active in making some cooperation attitude with South Korea.
Thank you so much for your elaborate explanation. I think really, how to balance security and economy will be the key in the future positioning of Korean Peninsula. Thank you. So the next question is by Youngi Kim Runo, who is a GW professor emeritus. Question is, many believe that the long-kept alliance between the United States and the Republic of Korea is in deep trouble. Do you agree? How concerned are you about it? Would it be different depending on who next presidents are in both or either country?
The question is about deep trouble in the alliance between the United States and Korea. First of all, I don't agree to this kind of the concept or judgment that our alliance get into trouble. No, I don't think so. Still, we have very strong and healthy alliance between the United States and Korea. But from time to time, a politician or some politicians or some experts may say that and have said that the alliance between the two two countries has been different from the previous times. Of course, in the past, from some point of view, in the past, the alliance seemed to be stronger because there was no any kind of the different opinions dealing with the alliance issues. But nowadays, both countries, United States, in both countries, United States and Korea, the society, political environment, economic situation are totally different from the previous days. So the different opinions could occur in any field, not only the security matters, but also in economic issues, social issues, on various issue field, we could have the different view. If we have the different view, they call them as a trouble source. But I don't think those things could be regarded as the trouble. It's just the agenda of the negotiations or consultation between the two countries. We can, negotiate through the peaceful manner. Then no problem. We have control these issues in a very peaceful way, in a very negotiation way. So I don't label these things as a trouble. It's a healthy agenda, and I think we can manage those troubles.
Thank you. Well, it's good to know that we continue to have healthy alliance, and I guess it's all part of or the process of negotiation between the two countries. Okay, so the next question is by Marcus Galaskas from Atlantic Council. What do you think the alliance should be doing right now to prevent Kim Jong-un from following through on his warning that he is no longer bound by his past pledges to refrain from nuclear and ICBM testing?
Well, the question is so direct that that I don't believe that the Kim Jong-un would do something different from the previous years. I have been dealt with North Korean nuclear issues since the first nuclear crisis in 1992. Since then, I have followed up this case, North Korean nuclear issues. Sometimes, our expectation was high. Other times, our expectation very low, pessimistic. But nowadays, I couldn't make any detailed judgment about this situation. We could be optimistic or pessimistic about the possible solution of the nuclear program, nuclear issues of North Korea. I may say we have a future. We have. I couldn't say we totally control the North Korea program. Still, we believe that they are promoting their capability to increase their nuclear power. But I think at least they stop nuclear test. They stop launching the long-range missiles. So if North Korea tries to keep this trend continue, then we have chance to negotiate again. But when negotiation can be resumed, I don't know. But I have a hunch that North Korea is waiting for the November election, president election here in the United States, because we have, now only the 2 months left until the election. So I don't think there would be some drastic change of the trend, this trend, quite a trend. But after the election, maybe there would be a big chance for the United States and North Korea to conduct a negotiation. And also, there is no relation or contact between North and South Korea. South Korea has suggested or proposed a contact or some negotiations, but North Korea has rejected that. But anyway, as well as North Korea is interested in the outcome of the election, then only after the election, there could be some possibility to resume the negotiation.
All right, thank you. I'll directly go to the next question because it's related to what you've been discussing right now related to North Korea. It's another North Korea question from Joseph Ditrani, Missouri State University. What is the likelihood that the ROK will pursue an intra-Korea dialogue with the North for humanitarian economic cooperation while also working with the US on issues dealing with the complete and verifiable denuclearization of North Korea?
As I just briefly answer the question, how could make North Korea comply with the so-called CVID, complete verifiable denuclearization of North Korea? Where I hope that in some time North Korea will agree upon the CVID, but I don't think it's a very easy job for us to achieve this agreement. Well, this word CVID was invented when I was the chief negotiator in the six-party talks. At the beginning of the six-party talks, United States and South Korea agreed upon this terminology, and we provide this to North Korea. And first, North Korea resisted, opposed to this terminology, CVID. But finally, they accepted the principle of CVID. But until now, about the first six-part talks took place 2001, 2000. I forget years, but anyway, long time ago, we formulated six-party talks. But there have been more or less three agreements among six countries in the six-party talks forum. But the outcome seems to be unsuccessful in the final dismantlement of North Korean nuclear capabilities. But I don't think we would be pessimistic about the future negotiation with North Korea. Without this, the CVID, we cannot expect the reunification of the Korean Peninsula. This division of the Korean Peninsula has been more or less more than 70 years. I hope that through this dismantlement of a nuclear program by North Korea, we could achieve the reunification. But how to achieve that goal? We need the understanding of North Korea about the importance or the critical point of the possession of the nuclear arms by North Korea. Well, the NPT regime, we know about the NPT non-proliferation regime. None of the countries except the 5 countries could possess the nuclear arms. But some countries, as Pakistan, India, Israel, they have the nuclear arms. But North Korea wanted to be also the nuclear member. But the international community doesn't accept that kind of the scheme or plan of North Korea. So as well as international community could not accept the possession of nuclear weapons by North Korea, then how could North Korea continue this kind of the nuclear program? So I really hope that North Korea will abandon its nuclear program as soon as possible. North Korea cannot survive with the sanctions imposed by the Security Council of the United Nations and the individual sanctions from the various countries, including the United States. So under these strict sanctions, North Korea cannot develop its economy. North Korea has been facing the economic difficulties through the sanctions, international sanctions. So I don't know exactly when North Korea will comply with the international community demand, but I'm quite sure in some time North Korea will come to the negotiation table and comply with the international community demand.
Thank you. I guess nobody knows what North Korea's action would be, next action would be, but it was good to hear your positive views rather than pessimistic views about the situation. All right, moving on to our next question from another GW student, Rachel Kwan. What course of action would you recommend a college student who is interested in a similar diplomatic path as yours should take? I guess you could share your experience, how you became a diplomat, and give some advice to our students, because many of our students, including my current History of Korea class students, are listening to you right now.
This question is the most difficult question to me to answer. Well, as a human being in the society, we have to have the profession, right? The students are learning for their future profession. But why did I become the diplomat, and what kind of the path could the students take to become a diplomat? Well, diplomat means a profession through which we could represent these countries, representative of a country. Ambassador is the representative of these countries. Like I'm the representative of Korea. I'm very proud of my job as an ambassador, as a diplomat, Korean diplomat. And the path, how to become diplomat, well, first of all, you have to take the exam for being a diplomat. And well, I can advise you this. If you want to be a good diplomat, you can become diplomat, but how to be a good diplomat, you need to study humanities. During my career as a diplomat for the last 40 years, always I have a feeling that my knowledge is far short of in terms of the humanities. I advise you to read more books about history, literature, and philosophy. Those three items are very important to become a good diplomat. A few days ago, I had dinner with one of the governors of the state here in the United States. I had a dinner for more than 3.5 years. The 3.5 hours means the 150 minutes. It's a long time. We cannot only talk about the food itself. We cannot talk about health. We have to talk about the literature. We have to talk about the culture. We have to talk about the history. In order to take advantage of this meeting, we have to exchange views and opinions, or exchange all the our philosophy, daily life philosophy, something like that. So during these conversations, if I am short of the knowledge about the humanities, then we have to stop the conversation. So we have to have this some silent moments. It's very awkward for us to have the silent moment over the dinner. Anyway, for the continuation of the dialogue, for the continuation of the negotiation, for the continuation of the contact, we need some skill of dialogue, some skill of the presentation of themselves, for the skill of the taking question and giving the good answer, then it needs some kind of a knowledge or some intellectual. So that's the reason why I advise you, if you want to be a diplomat, you have to study much more about humanities, in particular 3 fields: philosophy, history, and literature. Those fields could be very helpful for you to be a good diplomat. Is that enough? I don't know. This is going on.
I think I could not have heard better answer as a historian.
You are a historian, right?
Historian.
We'll get more students in your next class.
Thank you, Ambassador. Actually, you know, what your answer precisely complies with the vision and the goal of our Institute for Korean Studies at GW. So our goal is to strengthen humanities in the nation's capital, because we always talk about, you know, security issues, North Korea, but we never talk about its really, you know, its deep history, culture, and, you know, a lot of various topics that you can learn about Korea. And so our institute is really trying hard to diversify Korea-related issues here in Washington. So I thank you very much for that wonderful and excellent answer that you gave.
Thank you very much for your compliments.
Nice question. I think we are, you know, the time has already passed. It's about an hour that we spent talking. I think it really went by so quickly. I noticed that we continue to receive many questions from our audience, but I would like to apologize that we won't be able to get to them. So before we close this event, I would like to again advertise our next week's event, which is the 70th year commemoration of the Korean War, and Ambassador Lee will be once again joining us and give congratulatory remarks, and I really appreciate your time for that as well. And before we close, I would like to again mention about our survey. So we'll be sending out an email after this, so I would appreciate if you could complete the survey and help us improve our future.
Oh yes, I will do. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. And thanks all for your participation.
I hope to see you in person sometime.
Yes, definitely, Ambassador.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.
You too, have a good day.